So as we catch up with 1 Samuel today, the book began, where kind of the book of Judges ends, and the book of Judges is kind of just this book where Israel seems to kind of be going back and forth, and we kind of begin and we see Eli. Eli's got some messed up kids, and those kids kind of seem to be an indictment on Eli, where he's kind of the last judge, and it just doesn't go that well for him, and we end up seeing this song of Hannah, which ends up being Hannah's song, which is Samuel's mother, kind of sounds a lot like Mary's song in Luke, and so it's kind of this kind of resurgence of hope, kind of coming back in, and she kind of gives Samuel to the temple, and Samuel kind of grows up around there, and we kind of see Samuel kind of become a prophet. There's kind of some weird language about, and I think we kind of discussed this about Samuel, how righteous was he, we definitely know he was good and all that stuff, but it seems like there's some things on the fringes that aren't the best, but that's fine. We kind of pick up, Samuel's there to find a king, and he ends up finding King Saul, but King Saul has problems. For those of you that weren't here when we started this, one of the interesting things about this book, which this is the Jewish Study Bible, that said about Saul, was it was very apologetic towards Saul. Whereas the Christian Bibles usually are pretty negative towards Saul right away. It was very apologetic to them. I kind of disagree with them on that, but I think that's an interesting case to make, that they're pretty apologetic towards him. One of the things we saw with Saul is that he's really no good with the donkeys, right? So he's lost some donkeys and he can't find the donkeys, and that comes up in David because David's actually good at keeping the sheep, that he's a good shepherd, and Saul loses these donkeys and can't find them. This is new. They must have a new guy. Yeah, they have entertainment today. This might change some stuff in the future. We'll see. But so they we have a background soundtrack now. We have a background soundtrack. So Saul, some of the things we saw that was kind of weird about Saul is that he was like hiding towards the responsibility of being a king. It kind of came out that he was to be king, and he's like hiding behind stuff. It's like he never really wanted it, and that kind of theme seems to be kind of going out through his kingship. That he's always kind of late to the party of like leading. That things aren't always going well for him, and we see, and a couple things that God says before, as they're crowning Saul king, is God tells Samuel, it's like, hey, it's not your fault, Samuel. It's not your fault. They haven't rejected you. They have rejected me. Which is a important lesson that takes us all through the scriptures. It's this thing where the people of Israel are rejecting their God to go back to other places, to go back to Egypt, to go back to places like Babylon, and all these things. And we end up seeing that Saul ends up kind of going away from the Lord, and then we see kind of the rise of David. And David is a good shepherd. He's all the right things, and we see that he ends up defeating Goliath. And my big lesson on David and Goliath is that David and Goliath's story is not about how we can defeat the giants in our lives. That David is God's man, and God is defeating the big things. And what we see as we go forward from here and into David's life, that David's life ends up kind of falling off of a cliff near the end of Second Samuel. And we're going to see that happen. And the thing to hold in our minds is what made David, when he was when he was king successful, what made him when he was fighting Goliath successful, and why did he start kind of falling off as we continue to read through here. To talk about the very specific things that were around is David is not king yet, but he's kind of been anointed as this thing, and Saul is starting to realize that and does not like David whatsoever, and has thrown spears at him. And the story that we have right before our reading today is the story about Jonathan, and Jonathan doesn't believe David that Jonathan he's the son of Saul, that his dad hates him as much as he does. And there's kind of this big test that happens at a dinner, and Jonathan is like, and realizes that Saul hates David, and Jonathan goes out to where David is hiding, and they kind of share this embrace, and that it means that David can't be around the palace anymore, that it's all gotten serious. So now we're going to go on the road, and it's this big hunt for David. So here we go. So did anyone want to add anything to that? Like that's, for being on cold medicine, that's a decent review. like that's all those good things. So I have a question for those on Zoom. Can you guys hear the music that's being played next door?
Faintly.
Faintly? Okay, good. Because your guys are my recording for.
It's just very, very, very lightly, like Ed said, just very, very way in the background.
Good. All right, so let's listen. Let's start off with chapter 21, and we'll probably read the whole chapter there. It's not too terribly long. So 1 Samuel chapter 21. Let's see, share sound, optimize for video, and here we go.
Now David came to Nob, to Ahimelech the priest. And Ahimelech was afraid when he met David and said to him,
"Why are you alone and no one is with you?"
"The king has ordered me on some business and said to me, 'Do not let anyone know anything about the business on which I send you, or what I have commanded you. And I have directed my young men to such and such a place. Now therefore, what have you on hand? Give me 5 loaves of bread in my hand, or whatever can be found.'"
"There is no common bread on hand, but there is holy bread, if the young men have at least kept themselves from women."
"Truly, women have been kept from us about 3 days since I came out, and the vessels of the young men are holy, and the bread is in effect common, even though it was consecrated in the vessel this day."
So the priest gave him holy bread, for there was no bread there, but the showbread, which had been taken from before the Lord, in order to put hot bread in its place on the day when it was taken away. Now a certain man of the servants of Saul was there that day, detained before the Lord. And his name was Doeg, an Edomite, the chief of the herdsmen who belonged to Saul. And David said to Ahimelech,
"Is there not here on hand a spear or a sword? For I have brought neither my sword nor my weapons with me, because the king's business required haste."
"The sword of Goliath the Philistine, whom you killed in the valley of Elah. There it is, wrapped in a cloth behind the ephod. If you will take that, take it, for there is no other except that one here."
"There is none like it. Give it to me."
Then David arose and fled that day from before Saul, and went to Achish, the king of Gath. And the servants of Achish said to him,
"Is this not David, the king of the land? Did they not sing of him to one another in dances, saying, 'Saul has slain his thousands, and David his 10,000s'?"
Now David took these words to heart, and was very much afraid of Achish, the king of Gath. So he changed his behavior before them, pretended madness in their hands, scratched on the doors of the gate, and let his saliva fall down on his beard. Then Achish said to his servants,
Look, you see the man is insane. Why have you brought him to me? Have I need of madmen, that you have brought this fellow to play the madman in my presence? Shall this fellow come into my house?
Okay, all right. So what are you hearing here? There should be a story that we just read that sounds familiar. So what kind of stood out?
Well, David ate the consecrated bread.
Ate the consecrated bread. Where's that familiar? Do you remember?
Some cave.
What?
Some cave over there.
It's on the tip of yeah.
Does anyone remember? It's in so I have it. It's Matthew chapter 12. I wrote it down. Chapter 12 verse 4. Let's see. Let me make sure that's right. Yeah. So at the beginning of Matthew chapter 12, I'll just kind of read this. I'm reading it from the ESV translation. At that time, Jesus went through the grain fields on the Sabbath. His disciples were hungry, and they began to pluck heads of grain and eat. But when the Pharisees saw it, they said to him, Look, your disciples are doing what isn't lawful on the Sabbath. And he said to them, Have you not read what David did when he was hungry? And those who were with him, how he entered the house of God and ate of the presence, which it was not lawful for him, or eat, nor for those who were with him, but only for the priests? Or have you not read in the law and the Sabbath, the priests in the temple profane the Sabbath and are guiltless? I tell you, something greater than the temple is here. And if you had known what this means, I desire mercy and not sacrifice, you would not have condemned the guiltless. For the Son of Man is the Lord of the Sabbath. And every time I read the ESV, so that's that story there where he's being condemned about eating on there, and Jesus don't you remember our father David? He ate of the showbread, the stuff that's consecrated there. So this story is, Jesus references David coming in here when he's kind of on the run from Saul. So is there anything else that you kind of noticed going on here that you think was interesting? Besides all the music going on behind us. I'll have to figure out if that's every week.
He didn't have a weapon.
Do what?
David did not have a
He didn't have a weapon. Yeah. And he ends up what does he end up finding there?
Yeah.
The Goliath sword, which is kind of interesting. What do you think that means? So he doesn't have a weapon, and they end up going and eating this consecrated bread, and then he ends up finding Goliath's sword. What did
Faith.
he like faith? Kind of responding out in the faith. Yeah, I think that's all part of it. Yeah. What else do you think is going on?
Obviously, it was Saul's plan to make him leave in a hurry, so he didn't have any weapons, didn't have anything with him.
Yeah. You're definitely seeing that he just started going. Yeah, he just started going, and I think it's this interesting, I don't know, kind of like what Ann said about that faith of you're seeing this kind of being preserved idea, as he's kind of going forward here. He's going and he's eating things from the temple, which is a big no-no, but he's allowed to. And I think it's funny that there's this whole conversation that happens well, have the men stayed away from the ladies, all that stuff, and they shouldn't be part of that at all, and yet here they are kind of being preserved, and then you see that preservation happening even in how David had defeated Goliath already. Now he's kind of has his weapon too. It all sounds like right here, it sounds like almost every fantasy adventure story I've ever read. Yeah, you know, kind of like all the, you know, kind of the ideas, like all of a sudden the sword of Azeroth is being presented to Bilbo Baggins or something like that. You know, like that's but I think it's kind of hitting those notes of being like, oh yeah, like David is being preserved.
Would that be the Holy Spirit working in him?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
That's what he's supposed to be doing.
Yeah. So Anna's saying that it's like the Holy Spirit working and to preserve him there. So I think that's all kind of part of it here. Let's see. Now, so I have this underlined. Why did I underline this? Verse 12 of 21. Now David took these words to heart and was very much afraid of Ashkus, the king of Gath. So he changed his behavior before him and pretended madness.
I think that's backwards. Why would he be afraid of this other guy who has just said, David killed tens of thousands?
Yeah.
I would think it would be the other way around. I think Achish would be afraid of
Yeah.
David.
Well, maybe Ashkus, or whatever his name is.
Yeah, him.
Achish. Maybe like David's worried that his honor is still for Saul.
I think he was worried that Achish would do him in and brag about it.
Yeah. They do him in?
Yeah, do David in, kill David.
Okay.
Brag about it.
Okay. Yeah.
In the notes in the Jewish Study Bible, it says he understood that he had been recognized.
Okay.
In his life, so maybe
Okay.
trying to be
Just the fact of being recognized.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. So he's trying to keep a low profile.
I think he was pretty smart in feigning that he's crazy.
Yeah. So no, I think it's just interesting. We have this story kind of playing out here. So did anyone want to say anything else?
So do you think that Achish didn't realize it was David then? The servants were saying that about, but then.
Because they're like in verse 11, they're like, the servant said, "Is this not David, the king of the land?" And then they kind of sing the song, and David's like, "Oh dang."
Then when he asks man, then he says, "Why do you bring this madman to me? I have enough here already."
Oh, so the king like didn't recognize him, but the servants did, and so
But that was before he was acting.
yeah, before he was acting weird. Yeah, and so kind of that, just keeping that low profile.
The Jewish humor comes out here too.
Oh yeah.
Achish says, "Hey, I don't have enough madmen around here. You bring him another one?"
Oh yeah. Yeah. See, they got some of that humor in there. Yeah. Yeah. So all right, let's continue on. Let's go to 22. We'll probably do this whole paragraph, this whole chapter as well.
David therefore departed from there, and escaped to the cave of Adullam. So when his brothers and all his father's house heard it, they went down there to him. And everyone who was in distress, everyone who was in debt, and everyone who was discontented gathered to him. So he became captain over them, and there were about 400 men with him. Then David went from there to Mizpah of Moab. And he said to the king of Moab,
Please, let my father and mother come here with you, till I know what God will do for me.
So he brought them before the king of Moab, and they dwelt with him all the time that David was in the stronghold. Now the prophet Gad said to David,
Do not stay in the stronghold. Depart, and go to the land of Judah.
So David departed, and went into the forest of Hereth. When Saul heard that David and the men who were with him had been discovered, now Saul was staying in Gibeah, under a tamarisk tree in Ramah, with his spear in his hand and all his servants standing about him. Then Saul said to his servants who stood about him,
Hear now, you Benjamites. Will the son of Jesse give every one of you fields and vineyards, and make you all captains of thousands and captains of hundreds? All of you have conspired against me, and there is no one who reveals to me that my son has made a covenant with the son of Jesse. And there is not one of you who is sorry for me, or reveals to me that my son has stirred up my servant against me to lie in wait as it is this day.
Then answered Doeg, the Edomite, who was set over the servants of Saul.
I saw the son of Jesse going to Nob, to Ahimelech, the son of Ahitub, and he inquired of the Lord for him, gave him provisions, and gave him the sword of Goliath, the Philistine.
So the king sent to call Ahimelech the priest, the son of Ahitub, and all his father's house, the priests who were in Nob. And they all came to the king. And Saul said,
Hear now, son of Ahitub.
Here I am, my lord.
Why have you conspired against me, you and the son of Jesse, in that you have given him bread and a sword, and have inquired of God for him, that he should rise against me to lie in wait, as it is this day?
And who among all your servants is as faithful as David, who is the king's son-in-law, who goes at your bidding and is honorable in your house? Did I then begin to inquire of God for him? Far be it from me. Let not the king impute anything to his servant or to any in the house of my father. For your servant knew nothing of all this, little or much.
You shall surely die, Ahimelech. You and all your father's house.
Then the king said to the guards who stood about him,
Turn and kill the priests of the Lord, because their hand also is with David, and because they knew when he fled and did not tell it to me.
But the servants of the king would not lift their hands to strike the priests of the Lord. And the king said to Doeg,
You, turn and kill the priests!
So Doeg the Edomite turned and struck the priests, and killed on that day 85 men who wore a linen ephod. Also Nob, the city of the priests, he struck with the edge of the sword, both men and women, children and nursing infants, oxen and donkeys and sheep, with the edge of the sword. Now one of the sons of Ahimelech, the son of Ahitub, named Abiathar, escaped, and fled after David. And Abiathar told David that Saul had killed the Lord's priests. So David said to Abiathar,
I knew that day when Doeg the Edomite was there, that he would surely tell Saul, I have caused the death of all the persons of your father's house. Stay with me. Do not fear. For he who seeks my life seeks your life, but with me you shall be safe.
Okay. Cheery chapter. Cheery chapter. All right, so what stands out to you on this one? There's a few things here.
It's a lot of priests to be killing.
That's a lot of priests to be killing. There is a lot of priests to be killing. So like that's let's get to that part. Let's get to that part. So don't let us forget to talk about that. Yeah. So what else kind of stood out?
Well, it seems kind of there when Saul turned to his own people and said, kill all these priests, and they wouldn't. That,
yeah,
they were kind of figuring out that he's nuts or whatever.
Yeah. What? So that, I mean, this whole, so like it's, all right, so it keeps getting brought up here. So like we see that Saul, has just gone straight into evil, you know, like killing the priest, killing all this stuff. Like, it's like anyone that's against him, he'll kill to get out of all this. Like, his power must reign supreme, and I will thwart everyone that gets in my way, type of thing. Like, these people just kind of harbor David here, and so also it probably didn't do too many good things to Saul's soul when they found out that he got Goliath's sword. You know, like, that's like when he finds that out, because that's one of the times when, say, David really one-upped him. You know, like, that's, and, you know, and saw David being glorious here, that would probably enrage him pretty significantly.
You got to hand it to Himelech, though. He stood up to Saul.
Yeah.
As that was, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Himelech must have known what was going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I thought what was interesting was that near the beginning of the chapter, like, he's talking to that prophet in Gad, and he's like, don't stay here, keep on moving, you know, go to the forest. And so I have some notes here from a previous time, and I'm trying to figure out what I was writing here, because it's referencing, it's verse 7. And Saul said to his servants who stood by him, "Hear now, you Benjamites, will the son of Jesse give every one of you fields and vineyards, and make you all captains of thousands and captains of hundreds?" And so there's a reference to 1 Samuel 8:14. What's going on in 8:14? Let me look at that. Let's see what's going on here. Israel demands a king. And remember that big demand they wanted for the king? Like, so here's verse 13. "And he will take your daughters to be perfumers, cooks, and bakers, and he will take the best of your fields, your vineyards, and your olive groves, and give them to his servants." This is what Samuel was saying about the king. And so, see, sometimes I'm intelligent in my underlining. Like, so Saul is saying, like, "Here, you Benjaminites, like, you know, who is going to give you all these things?" But like that, but he's using it as threatening language. Like, you better get on board and I'll give you all these things. But it's almost calling us back to what Samuel said. It's like, no, remember, he's going to take everything of yours. Like, he's going to take everything, which is interesting.
It's a lesson in history.
Yeah, it is. Well, and it's that this whole thing is this lesson of, it's all about time. Like, when you start worshiping power, like, I don't care what side you're on anything. You start worshiping power, and it's gonna go sideways. It's gonna go sideways on you real fast, and you think you have control over it.
I think that happened in Russia, maybe, or Korea, or
Korea. Like, it's like, I think we could be a little more local to it as well. Like, that's, you know, and so we so going back to the Russia thing for a second, there was an HBO miniseries called Chernobyl. Did anyone watch that? So it came out, I think it came out during the Corona. Chernobyl. Yeah, the nuclear plant explosion. But that whole show was about just like the corruption of power, that it really showed how all these people were just enamored with their positions of prominence and did not want to actually solve an issue that everyone knew was coming. And because it would have lowered their position of prominence. And that's really what the show was about. And that's, yeah, so that can be, it's kind of talking about all these things here, you know, like all these priests, they helped David, and they all die, you know, They all die here. Let's see here. Verse 13 I thought was interesting. Then Saul said, "Why have you conspired against me, you and the son of Jesse, in that you have given him bread and a sword and have inquired of God for him, that he should rise against me to lie in wait as it is this day?" Saul is so worried that David is going to attack him, even though there's been no evidence of any activity from David. Saul is projecting right here. And you guys know what projecting is? You familiar with that term? That he's like, David's going to do what I'm doing to him. He's going to do it to me. And he's so worried about that. And to the point where he goes to all those prophets and well, not the prophets, to the priests, and he kills all those priests of God. So to kind of make his point.
Interesting, Doug the Edomite did it too.
Yeah.
It was David's ruse.
Yeah.
He enlisted them.
Yeah, he had to get someone else.
Doug couldn't be doing that all by himself.
Yeah. He had to enlist someone that was that was not of the tribe.
There's so much psychological stuff in the Bible.
Oh yeah. And so like but it's fascinating, and this stuff should kind of arrest some of our own behavior a lot of times when we think that, like going against like this holy thing because I have this zealous project or something like that, and like that we need to slow down sometimes, because sometimes we think I'm calling it a project, but it could be anything. Our project becomes the most important thing, and it doesn't. It doesn't.
I can't get that on my own. I have to be a Bible study. I cannot.
Yeah, well, that's why these Bible studies are these are good, because we all help see each other see it. All right. Did anyone else have anything that we need to talk about?
Pastor, if I may, I found it interesting that David, and he took his family when he was trying to get away from Saul and went to Moab, but that's where his great grandmother was from.
Okay, yeah. So he's going back to kind of to home type of thing, a little bit. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's in the beginning of 22.
Yeah, that's great. Like it kind of just documenting where he's going and all. Let's see. All right, well, let's continue on. Let's go to the next thing. And there's a reason why I keep pointing out how badly Saul is projecting, because we're going to get to a point where David has the opportunity to kill Saul, and he doesn't. It's multiple opportunities. So, all right. Chapter 23. Let's see. So here we go.
Then they told David,
"Look, the Philistines are fighting against Keilah, and they are robbing the threshing floors."
Therefore David inquired of the Lord,
"Shall I go and attack these Philistines?"
"Go and attack the Philistines and save Keilah."
But David's men said to him,
"Look, we are afraid here in Judah. How much more then if we go to Keilah against the armies of the Philistines?"
Then David inquired of the Lord once again. And the Lord answered him,
"Arise, go down to Keilah, for I will deliver the Philistines into your hand."
And David and his men went to Keilah and fought with the Philistines, and struck them with a mighty blow, and took away their livestock. So David saved the inhabitants of Keilah. Now it happened, when Abiathar the son of Ahimelech fled to David at Keilah, that he went down with an ephod in his hand. And Saul was told that David had gone to Keilah. So Saul said,
God has delivered him into my hand, for he has shut himself in by entering a town that has gates and bars.
Then Saul called all the people together for war, to go down to Keilah to besiege David and his men. When David knew that Saul plotted evil against him, he said to Abiathar the priest,
Bring the ephod here. O Lord, God of Israel, your servant has certainly heard that Saul seeks to come to Keilah to destroy the city for my sake. Will the men of Keilah deliver me into his hand? Will Saul come down as your servant has heard? O Lord God of Israel, I pray, tell your servant.
He will come down.
Will the men of Keilah deliver me and my men into the hand of Saul?
They will deliver you.
So David and his men, about 600, arose and departed from Keilah and went wherever they could go. Then it was told Saul that David had escaped from Keilah, so he halted the expedition. And David stayed in strongholds in the wilderness and remained in the mountains in the wilderness of Ziph. Saul sought him every day, but God did not deliver him into his hand. So David saw that Saul had come out to seek his life, and David was in the wilderness of Ziph, in a forest. Then Jonathan, Saul's son, arose and went to David in the woods, and strengthened his hand in God. And he said to him,
Do not fear, for the hand of Saul my father shall not find you. You shall be king over Israel, and I shall be next to you. Even my father Saul knows that.
So the two of them made a covenant before the Lord. And David stayed in the woods, and Jonathan went to his own house. Then the Ziphites came up to Saul at Gibeah.
Is David not hiding with us in strongholds in the woods, in the hill of Hachilah, which is on the south of Jeshimon? Now therefore, O king, come down according to all the desire of your soul to come down, and our part shall be to deliver him into the king's hand.
Blessed are you of the Lord, for you have compassion on me. Please go and find out for sure, and see the place where his hideout is, and who has seen him there. For I am told he is very crafty. See therefore, and take knowledge of all the lurking places where he hides, and come back to me with certainty, and I will go with you. And it shall be, if he is in the land, that I will search for him throughout all the clans of Judah.
So they arose and went to Ziph before Saul. But David and his men were in the wilderness of Maon, in the plain on the south of Jeshimon. When Saul and his men went to seek him, they told David. Therefore he went down to the rock and stayed in the wilderness of Maon. And when Saul heard that, he pursued David in the wilderness of Maon. Then Saul went on one side of the mountain, and David and his men on the other side of the mountain. So David made haste to get away from Saul, for Saul and his men were encircling David and his men to take them. But a messenger came to Saul.
Hurry and come, for the Philistines have invaded the land.
Therefore Saul returned from pursuing David and went against the Philistines. So they called that place the Rock of Escape. Then David went up from there and dwelt in strongholds at En-Gedi.
Okay. Okay, so what stood out to you on this one? What stood out to you here? I had
The wilderness.
Do what?
The wilderness.
The wilderness?
We have another story that comes from through the wilderness.
Yeah, there's always a lot of stuff going on in the wilderness, so we can pay attention to that.
Yeah.
That's good. That's good. What else is going on?
Well, it's interesting that David's running for his life, and yet he took time out to go and kill these people or conquer them for his people.
Yeah. So Carol was saying that you noticed that people were, that he took time to save these other people. That's against the Philistines there, even though he's in the middle of hanging out and all that. And I think that's an interesting little detail and something that you're seeing about David as we're kind of crafting what this guy looks like. Yeah, that actually plays in later in the story. Right. Well, later in this chapter, we'll just go ahead and talk about it now. Verse 23, you have Saul very upset, and I think it's fascinating how he describes David. He goes, "See therefore and take knowledge of all the lurking places where he hides." And come back to me, how he describes David there. He's like a snake hiding in the between the rocks and all that stuff. But what we see earlier is like David went at great risk to go save these people. And these people were even by the testimony of the Lord down here later in the story would give them up to Saul, even though he saved them. That we're seeing that this person that Saul is going after is not an accurate picture of who David is. And it's just this anger of Saul. But David has to keep on running. So what else kind of stood out to you here?
Well, that before he went to the Lord, he would ask the Lord, "Is this the right thing?"
Yeah.
Is this the right thing?
There's lots of Lord talk going on in this section. Lots of Lord talk. Like that. That's, in this chapter 4, I think chapter before that, lots of David's like, "What should I do?" Type of thing, which is kind of interesting, and it's definitely telling us something about David as we come forward here.
What is the ephod again? Is that what the priests wear?
Yeah, it's kind of like priestly garments. It's like priestly garments. I looked at that on my phone during this last chapter reading. So,
I looked it up. It's a sleeveless thing. Some call it an apron that the priest wear. The high priest. Yeah.
Ed, you were saying something?
I just remembered it from other chapters earlier.
Yeah. So it's like priestly garments type of.
You see words that you don't understand. You look them up.
Yeah. I kept expecting them to define it, and they just weren't. And so it's like a priestly garments.
Every time it said forest, it's got a different word here in the Jewish Bible. I forget what it was now.
Oh, really? Yeah. In the forest?
Yeah.
And let's see. What else I think was interesting in here? So what we've basically been doing is we've been getting to chapter 24, where all this running is going to pay off. So let's go into and you could see where all this is happening, like where Cheryl was saying we're in the wilderness. We're in the wilderness and all these things, and we're going to see David is actually turning things around on Saul here. So like where Cheryl's pointing out the wilderness, I think that's good to point that out because this is where we are, and we're going to see something very righteous happen. So
because I just don't know this. Who's the bad guy?
Who's the bad guy?
David or Saul?
So I think Saul. I think we'd recognize Saul as it, but as with everything, there's always a lot of complexity because Saul is still king, even though David's going to be the next one. But Saul is being very bad by chasing after David, and you could tell that, and especially by how he's murdering the priests and all these things just to get David. Like this isn't good. And he's also accusing David constantly that he's lurking in these places, and he keeps accusing David of that he's going to kill him the way Saul is trying to kill David. And so we'll get into chapter 24 here.
Pastor, don't you think that it is an opposite thing where David is constantly asking God and seeking God's guidance, whereas Saul is not?
Oh yeah, no, definitely. And I'm glad you're saying that because it's definitely being like an either or is being presented here, where Saul just keeps on serving himself and his own selfish ends, and David keeps on looking at, and we see that in who David rescues. That David is going and serving other people.
Right.
So, yeah. No, I think that's good example. All right, so let's do 24 real quick. What do I need to do? I need to hit with the right buttons is what I need to do.
Yeah, when you bring it up, it's so minimized. I have to read my Bible to know what's been said.
Oh, really?
It doesn't get big on the screen.
Oh, I don't know how to help you. Like that.
You're not taking your picture off when it's reading.
It does ours, Pastor.
Click away. Click that box that I'm on. It should take it. Well, I don't know why it's not. I don't know, but here we go. Let's do 24.
Now it happened, when Saul had returned from following the Philistines, that it was told him,
"Take note, David is in the wilderness of En-Gedi."
Then Saul took 3,000 chosen men from all Israel and went to seek David and his men on the rocks of the wild goats. So he came to the sheepfolds by the road, where there was a cave, and Saul went in to attend to his needs. David and his men were staying in the recesses of the cave. Then the men of David said to him,
"This is the day of which the Lord said to you, 'Behold, I will deliver your enemy into your hand, that you may do to him as it seems good to you.'"
And David arose and secretly cut off a corner of Saul's robe. Now it happened afterward that David's heart troubled him because he had cut Saul's robe. And he said to his men,
"The Lord forbid that I should do this thing to my master, the Lord's anointed, to stretch out my hand against him, seeing he is the anointed of the Lord."
So David restrained his servants with these words, and did not allow them to rise against Saul. And Saul got up from the cave and went on his way. David also arose afterward, went out of the cave, and called out to Saul,
"My lord the king!"
And when Saul looked behind him, David stooped with his face to the earth and bowed down.
Why do you listen to the words of men who say, "Indeed, David seeks your harm"? Look this day, your eyes have seen that the Lord delivered you today into my hand in the cave, and someone urged me to kill you. But my eye spared you. And I said, I will not stretch out my hand against my Lord, for he is the Lord's anointed. Moreover, my father, see the corner of your robe in my hand. For in that I cut off the corner of your robe and did not kill you, know and see that there is neither evil nor rebellion in my hand, and I have not sinned against you. Yet you hunt my life to take it. Let the Lord judge between you and me, and let the Lord avenge me on you. But my hand shall not be against you. As the proverb of the ancients says, wickedness proceeds from the wicked, but my hand shall not be against you. After whom has the king of Israel come out? Whom do you pursue? A dead dog? A flea? Therefore, let the Lord be judge, and judge between you and me, and see and plead my case, and deliver me out of your hand.
So it was, when David had finished speaking these words to Saul, that Saul said,
Is this your voice, my son, David?
And Saul lifted up his voice and wept.
Oh, you are more righteous than I. For you have rewarded me with good, whereas I have rewarded you with evil. And you have shown this day how you have dealt well with me. For when the Lord delivered me into your hand, you did not kill me. For if a man finds his enemy, will he let him get away safely? Therefore may the Lord reward you with good for what you have done to me this day. And now I know indeed that you shall surely be king, and that the kingdom of Israel shall be established in your hand. Therefore swear now to me, by the Lord, that you will not cut off my descendants after me, and that you will not destroy my name from my father's house.
So David swore to Saul, and Saul went home. But David and his men went up to the stronghold.
Okay.
Then Samuel.
Fun stuff. So you can see where we've been getting to this point in the story here. So let's talk about this. So something I missed that I wanted to mention in chapter 23 was chapter 23, verse 13. So David and his men, about 600, arose and went from there. What we know about numbers and all that stuff is that 6 is kind of an incomplete number. So Anne, you haven't been around for this whole time. So numbers don't necessarily mean numbers.
That's what I was wondering.
Yeah, so
hundreds and thousands and
yeah. So the way I kind of look at numbers in the Bible, could they mean exactly what they mean? Yes. But they also are like emojis. You know, when people text and they put like a heart emoji or a smiley face emoji, numbers are a lot of times like emojis. So like 3 is a good number. 6 kind of has an idea of like incompleteness. So you have like the 6 days of creation is kind of an incomplete kind of thing. Like the number of man in Revelation is 666. So it's kind of this incompleteness. It doesn't necessarily mean evil. It just means kind of incompleteness. 7 is kind of this idea of completeness. 10s are often like I call them exclamation points. So like or like yes, so a lot of times you'll hear like 10,000 as a good number, and so that's like 10, like yes, with a bunch of exclamation points on the end of it.
Where do you get this information from about numbers?
About numbers, it's just seeing how it gets used. Like I can't pin down like one place. It's just kind of, and it's not like this is what it is. It's a hey, kind of like hear these things in it type of thing. So but I think what it's kind of talking about, that David's 600 men, like he's not just this mighty warrior with all of his mighty warrior men. It kind of appears like he doesn't have enough.
600 isn't enough.
Yeah, so it's kind of this incomplete number.
Yeah.
And so like that's kind of what I was kind of hearing there. So then we get into 24, and in verse 2, how many men does Saul have?
3,000.
3,000, which is one of those good numbers.
Pretty impressive.
And so it's one of those good numbers. These 3,000 people. It's almost presenting like Saul's got enough, which we've seen he's had enough. He's been killing priests. He's been killing and Saul has had enough people, going on this whole time. that's why this next thing is so interesting. Like, Saul has enough. And then Saul needs to go take a dump in a cave. Like that's basically what's going on there. And all of David's boys, guys are back there with him. And it's interesting. What do David's men say to David?
This is what the Lord said was going to happen.
This is like, the Lord has given you Saul. So from what we can tell this, what do you think? Has the Lord given him Saul here? What do you think? Like, he's definitely given him something.
Technically, yes.
Technically, yes.
But is it time for David to be king yet?
David doesn't act.
I think he's got the responsibility and the feel of the authority from the people. He just needs the actual authority.
Yeah. Well, and so I think this is an interesting thing where everyone's all of a sudden like, the Lord has given Saul into your hands. Here he is with his pants down. You've caught him with his pants down, literally.
Technically.
Yeah, like that. You've caught him in this cave and all that stuff. The Lord has given him to you. And one of the things that has adjusted me in all of this stuff is that sometimes it looks like there's just such great opportunities, and maybe still it's not the right time to do it what everyone is saying. His men want David now to act like Saul's been acting, to kill Saul.
God testing David if he's going to be honorable and forgiving?
Well, what part of our days are not a test, if we look at it like that, where there's a lot of opportunities we have. It's like, will we continue to choose honor and love, or will we just take this opportunity,
Well, if you look at it, say, well, I guess David won the popular vote, but the electoral vote is yet to come in.
Yeah. And so,
Let him go.
So then we have this next little scandalous act. So David goes up there and cuts off his corner of his robe. Did anyone think that what was David's reaction after he cut off the robe?
He felt bad.
Yeah, he felt bad. Does anyone know why he feels bad?
Why did he do it in the first place?
So why did he do it? Well, we see how he ends up doing it, where it's like, hey, I could have killed you, but he wouldn't have felt bad about that. Like, does anyone know why he felt bad about it?
There's something else.
Maybe the priests were supposed to be.
So
maybe the priests were supposed to be fully clothed and adorned without anything wrong.
No. I like where you're going, but no. Tracy, you were about to say something. Do you remember something?
There was something else about a corner of a robe getting.
There is.
Right,
There is.
something, yeah.
It's 1 Samuel chapter 15, verse 27. If you guys are interested, you can turn back there. 1 Samuel chapter 15, verse 27. And remember when Samuel is really upset Saul is upset at Samuel. And we'll start reading at verse 26. But Samuel said to Saul, I will not return with you, for you have rejected the word of the Lord, and the Lord has rejected you from being king over Israel. And as Samuel turned around to go away, Saul seized the edge of his robe, and it tore. So Samuel said to him, the Lord has torn the kingdom of Israel from you today, and has given it to the neighbor of yours. Who is better than you? And also the strength of Israel will not lie nor relent, for he is not a man, and he should relent. So this has already happened, and this is kind of like an ancient Near East kind of idea of power. If you're able to
it's a gesture.
It's like a gesture thing going over here. So it's almost like David first went in with the inkling of his men to show it's like the Lord has taken your power away. And he feels guilty about it. So he didn't kill him but he did this, but it's like this huge grand gesture, and then he doesn't use that when he goes out. Instead, he uses it as a servant, rather than like, I have cut your power away from you. Like, by the way, like Samuel already did, you know, I have cut your power away from you. He goes out, he's like, I could have killed you and I didn't. And he uses it in this humble manner, which is fascinating, right? Like that David keeps on going into this kind of humble way, that even when his own men are like, here it is. And so he comes out of the cave and he bows down. He's like, I could have killed you and I didn't. I think this also, I have some notes on top of it that talks about impulse control. I think this also shows this story is further damning on Saul, because we see again, David is controlling his impulses better than anybody, and Saul now completely changes his course when he sees what David has done. And it looks like Saul is almost a little repentant and all that stuff. But is it just because he has no impulse control and can only handle himself as far as his elbow? You know? That he's been on this war path against David, and David does one thing and he stops. Like, I'm not saying he needs to kill David. That's not good. But like, he flips so fast on stuff. I don't know. Does anyone have any thoughts about it?
It's almost like David is building social capital and respect.
Yeah, like David keeps building it, and Saul just keeps losing it all around.
It shows David's connection with God too, that he's more into what has got, because he wouldn't hurt Saul because he was the anointed one by
Yeah,
God.
yeah.
It didn't bother Saul. But for David, it was also.
It was also that anointed. Yeah.
It shows the difference in their relationship with God.
Yeah. So remember all that as we get into 2 Samuel and we get to the end, because if you look, Saul's line goes up and goes down, David's line goes up and goes down. And David ends up kind of looking a lot like Saul at the end of his life. But that's, I think, he's very into following after where God has been placing him. And he's been going after that life. I don't know, did anyone want to say anything else?
Just the note on verse 23, it says, David and men go up to the stronghold because they do not trust Saul.
Yeah.
He doesn't just go back with him to the palace. He's like, no, we're going to go back up here where we can defend ourselves.
Yeah, they still don't trust him. They still don't trust what that guy's doing. And so, because he's got no impulse control. And we're going to see that continues. But this, I think we're at the end of. No, we got a couple more.
I see twice in 12 and 15 in chapter 24, where he says, "May the Lord judge between me and you."
Yeah.
And I find not just once but twice that he said that. And I think that makes a big difference.
And you're seeing that that David is really leaning on the Lord to guide him in those, and that even if it ends up being in death to David, that he's like, I'm doing the right thing. I'm serving mankind here. I'm serving those other ones, and I'm serving the Lord's anointed. So that's good. That's good. So I'm glad we got just through this whole thing where we can kind of end it on a nice little, like this whole escapade of following after David kind of ends with this story. So was there anything else? Good deal. So we'll end right there. We'll do 25. Maybe we'll be able to finish up the book next week. And so that'll be great. For all that are watching on YouTube, on the recorded stuff, thank you for joining us today.